Good morning, everyone. Wow, hello. How is everyone this morning? Yeah? Okay, that's good. There we go. Very good. Well, this is your 5-minute announcement. So you have 5 minutes to do whatever it is you need to do before we get started. Thank you all so much for being here. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, welcome to the May full board meeting for the Savannah River Site Citizens Advisory Board. My name is Juanita Campbell, and I'm your CAB administrator today and your facilitator. And so we'll have our board introductions. We'll begin with Ms. Phyllis. Oh, yeah, well, yeah. Please do.
Let's officially call this meeting to order. I'm Phyllis Britt, I'm chairman.
Thank you.
Good morning, Kim Ray, CAB member, Waste Management Chair.
Marty Ball from Charleston.
Jamie Scott, CAB member.
Good morning, I'm Crystal Robertson. I'm the new office manager in the Aiken.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you. That's quite all right.
Good morning, Susan Fulmer, DES.
Good morning, Edwin Deshawn, DOE Savannah River.
James Tanner, Department of Energy and designated federal official, deputy designated federal official for the CAB.
John Richards, EPA Region 4, Atlanta.
Ken Sejuan, and I'm from Savannah State University, CAB member.
Pat Kilroy, cab member, Goose Creek.
Well, welcome to all of you. Welcome to our audience members, and welcome to those joining us online. So before we get started, we usually go over just a few meeting rules. So one very important rule to begin with, please make sure that any comments that you make, any questions, are directly into the microphone so that our friends joining us online can actually hear what you are saying. That's a very important part to the whole process of live streaming this, and also so that everybody can hear you that's in the room. We need for you to speak directly into the microphone, okay? Another one is once we have our presentations and we go into our Q&A session, 2 questions, then we move to the next person. Once everyone has had an opportunity to ask their 2 questions, we will start that rotation over again. So if you have additional questions, you'll be able to ask them at that time. Any questions about that? No? All right, well, in reviewing our agenda, we've got our gathering time. We've called the meeting to order. Thank you, Ms. Phyllis. Did you have any updates as the chair? Okay, wonderful.
All right. Hi. Okay, I was hoping Hubert would be here so that he could back me up on this, but he and I have been a little bit busy in the last month or so. We've been to 2 meetings. One, the semi-annual meeting of the chairs all over the United States of the various CABs, and the other was a meeting with the Government Accountability Office auditors who wanted to ask us a question about a specific thing, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I just thought I'd let y'all know, it's always interesting to me to see what the other CAB members are concerned about and what they're dealing with. And so the first thing was, and James, you might be able to help with this, they have they actually replaced the EM1?
So the new EM1 is appointed by the president, and that appointment, he has named someone, but the appointment has not been confirmed by the Senate yet.
Gotcha.
I haven't seen a schedule with his name on it for appointment yet either, so that's still pending. In the meantime, Roger Gerald is in place as EM2 and is fulfilling the duties admirably.
Right. However, at the CAB meeting, Roger Gerald couldn't make it either, and so we heard from EM3, who was Greg Sampson?
Sosson, Greg Sosson.
Spell that.
Sosson.
Okay, I could not read
Or
my
Sasson.
own handwriting,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
part of the problem.
No worries.
Sosson, thank you. Anyhow, he mentioned some efforts to advance work in nuclear power as a, what did he call it? A means toward security for tomorrow. That's a quote. He also listed key accomplishments such as what's happening at WIP, work involving true waste and groundwater at Los Alamos, and the nearly completed mixed-use facility at USC Aiken, which is supposed to open in June. So we'll see. One of the things that the chairs of the CAB always do is they go around, and they call it a round robin, to communicate what they're dealing with, what they're concerned about, that sort of thing. And so once again, communication came up over and over again, communication between DOE and the subcontractors. Apparently, some organizations don't have as much interaction as we do, as much positive interaction as we do, along with CAB's efforts to keep their local constituencies involved and informed. And so, like I said, that always comes up because we're not the only ones trying to get more members on the cab, trying to make sure our community knows what's going on. We heard concerns over things such as packaging and transporting waste, because we're not the only ones who are having to transport it across country and trying to figure out how to do that as safely as possible. The question of training also came up with a recommendation that some training can now be handled virtually on videos instead of doing it in person. Hanford, who actually was supposed to be the host of the meeting, we met virtually this time instead. They recounted some of the complications in their communications recently. Their newsletter had been stopped, and we were just talking about having to get approval to update the website and that sort of thing. And so that's slowing things down a little bit. Interaction with headquarters has been somewhat difficult. Community outreach has been stunted. One of the problems is we've lost a lot of institutional knowledge with the retirements that were made inviting. And so some of our, as we know, we've lost several big names at DOE and the associated organizations. Let's see if there's anything else that we need to talk about. It was interesting to me, we received an update from the Office of Regulatory and Public Affairs, and I noticed this time, maybe because of when we met, because we met at the end of April 23rd, they were still feeling their way through what the change in administration means to them. And so several of the speakers on the DOE side made a point of saying how supportive the administration had been and how helpful they had been. So I thought that was interesting. I hadn't heard that before, although when I talk about the next thing we went to, it was interesting that meeting, I'll mention that in a second. Anyway, we talked about budget, and they talked about how much money was allocated to each of the organizations, including ours, and ours is at 1.6 billion, is that right? Is that about right? Okay. And we had a big update on PFAS. If you have been here more than a year, we did that not too long ago, right? It's been probably a year and a half.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then we also met the representatives of the GAO audit group came and wanted to talk to us about the high-level radioactive waste interpretation, which apparently was an effort in 2019. And if you're interested, you can go back because this cab had a presentation, a lengthy presentation on the high-level waste interpretation in 2019, in the July 2019 meeting, which you can find online if you're interested. But they wanted to see how we thought DOE was doing as far as the point of that interpretation was to, wherever possible, downgrade high-level waste to something easier to manage, something easier to store and dispose of. And so they wanted to know how we saw what DOE was doing, if we felt like they were doing that. I asked around, and I think we're pretty much where we were in 2019 when it was first introduced. But wherever possible, I mean, it makes sense. If you can reduce something, if you can reduce what was defined as high-level waste to the kind of waste that you could send a WIP, that's certainly an advantage. So we talked a lot about that. I think they mainly wanted to know how our organization works and how we interact with DOE and what kind of feedback we get and whether we are informed when they're doing that sort of stuff. So I think that's it. If you have any questions, and if Hubert gets here, I'll see if he has anything that struck him that might not have struck me as interesting.
Kim, I saw your hand up.
Sorry, I forgot where I was. Kim Ray, Cab. Madam Chair, I had a question regarding the cabs that were still complaining about communication with DOE. Did they mention whether they're making any communication with their congressional delegations to facilitate that communication with DOE?
I think they were that was mainly Hanford, and I think they are in such confusion because they've had 3 DDFOs in 3 months, starting in January. And so they're kind of up in the air. Plus, they have the same problem we do, that the chairman, her term is up, and she's on there to be renewed, but hasn't been. And so she doesn't know, I think their switchover time is September or October. And she said, they're concerned about what that will mean, because of course what it's meant for us is we now have 10 people instead of 20 or so. So they're just living that same life. Plus they have the complications that we don't, as far as like they have tribal input that definitely affects how they function, and as it should. I mean, I'm not objecting to that. It's just that we're lucky that we mostly have people who are pretty supportive of what's going on at SRS and see it as a source of good employment, not something to be scared of. So I suspect, knowing the chairman at Hanford, that she's definitely in contact with the political end of it. So we don't often need that. There are times when we do. We don't have the same kind of issues they do. Does that answer your question?
I guess the question was, did they mention it? And I assume that they did not mention it.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about the chair's update? No? All right, thank you so much, Phyllis. All right, we'll go ahead and move along to our agency updates, and we will actually start with Mr. Edwin DeShong for DOE, Savannah River.
Good morning. It's definitely great to be here in Aiken, South Carolina to hold this meeting and allow us to talk about all the great work being done at Savannah River site. We have a phenomenal workforce, over 13,000 strong, and so we're really going to touch on some of the great partners that we have and some of the mission accomplishments we are accomplishing out there. First, the Advanced Manufacturing Collaborative. Construction is advancing for the completion of the facility on the University of South Carolina Aiken campus. The project is approximately 98% complete, with over 230,000 man-hours of construction work performed without any safety issues. Completion and occupancy are on track, as you mentioned, for later this summer. Currently, in the third quarter of 25, the project completed installation of the overhead run-ins and wirings for security cameras, conduit installation for electrical, linear metal ceiling installation, and interior painting. Installation of the building exterior lights and security cameras are ongoing, as well as installation of the audiovisual systems for conference rooms and labs. Mill work is progressing on the stairs and reception area, and they're installing stadium seating and installing the handrail system. Exterior work is being performed on the concrete placement for the sidewalks, the curbs, the gutters, the parking lot, and site preparation for the access roads. They initiated fabrication and installation of the screen wall in the back of the facility to enclose the dumpsters and bulk gas storage areas and other landscaping. Savannah River National Laboratory. So Battelle Savannah River Alliance, LLC, has finalized a contractor readiness assessment for the MK-18A project. The DOE readiness assessment is scheduled to commence on June 2nd. And the MK-18A project is a critical mission that involves recovery of rare and valuable isotopes. The budget. There's a full year continuing resolution for FY25 that's in effect, and we're funded through the end of the fiscal year. All right, I'll just touch on some of the operational progress and achievements, beginning with nuclear materials. LA is continuing to receive spent nuclear fuel shipments from domestic research reactors. H Canyon continues to make progress with the accelerated basin de-inventory and has completed 2 of the 3 dissolution batches planned for FY25. In addition, H Canyon continues operating a 6.3 electrolytic dissolver and has completed 11 of the 18 dissolution batches of the fast critical assembly material. K area, the facility continues to downblend and plans to complete 30 downblends of EM surplus plutonium in FY25. Currently, 20 of the 30 downblends of EM material have been completed so far. Transuranic waste shipments to the waste isolation pilot plant. SRS has completed 25 shipments to WIP. 8 of those are from E area and 17 are from K area. Liquid waste. Liquid waste integrated systems of facilities and chemical processes is presently in an outage to accommodate a site-wide steam outage for maintenance activities and to complete the last major upgrades in the infrastructure and process equipment. The improvements will enhance the salt and sludge processing capability identified to fulfill the Climb to 9 initiative. Once complete, these modifications will allow the liquid waste program to benefit from improved system performance and availability with a continued focus on aggressive high-purity processing to accelerate risk reduction. These efforts will help drive the liquid waste program to mission completion by 2037. Progress on the outage specific items, the new extended crossflow filters have been installed and are being readied for operation. The main process crane programmable logical controller and camera upgrades are approximately 30% complete. They replaced 22 contactors in the facility, and that's all about 75% complete. And basic process control software, the Delta V upgrades, are over 75% complete. All liquid waste facilities are expected to restart fully by July 2025. Since FY25, the salt waste processing facility has processed over 1.4 million gallons, contributing to an all-time cumulative total of 11.3 million gallons of radioactive salt produced since the start of the salt waste operation. The Defense Waste Process Facility has poured and leak checked 32 canisters of vitrified high-level waste. Glass waste storage building number 2 modifications for double stacking canisters continues to progress ahead of schedule. To date, 169 of the 300 canisters have been double stacked. The tank farms continue to prepare tank for preliminary cease waste removal and operational closure status. Tanks 11 and 15 have preliminary cease waste removal status, pending as of May 19th, 2025. Construction on the final set of salt disposal units 10 through 12 is progressing well. Saltstone disposal unit 10, the interior tank liner installation is now complete. The mechanical tie-ins and monitoring well installations are in progress. Saltstone disposal 11, all floor sections are complete, and over 38 of the 208 columns have been poured, and all the wall sections pouring are underway. Area completion. Savannah River Nuclear Solutions area completion projects has completed 41 of the 65 FY25 Federal Facility Agreement Plan deliverables. 34 were CERCLA milestones and 7 were Resource Conservation and Recovery Act commitments through April 2025. This achievement brings the cumulative total of combined milestones and commitments to 4,221 met on or ahead of schedule since 1993. Facility deactivation and decommissioning activities for FY25, expected to achieve demolition and removal of 5 structures along with ancillary equipment in D area near the old powerhouse and at the F area material storage building, or also known as 235F. This will improve DOE's progress towards footprint reduction and increase performance metrics from 317 to 322 buildings decommissioned across SRS. D area scope includes domestic water, chemical feed systems building, 2 transformers, and ancillary equipment such as air switches, domestic water wells, and 6,000 feet of steam lines across the facility they'll be removing. DNR scope at 235F includes the entry point, or 720F, central alarm station, and the perimeter fencing for the facility. Waste unit remediation status. SRS's current remediation status of waste units completed is 415 out of 515 waste units total, an increase due to 3 waste units having been completed within the prior FY. This is a big deal, a big accomplishment for us, and which also includes the lower 3 runs integrated operable unit, car pond, and the old R area discharge canal, all achieved remediation actions that was agreed upon with the core team. That concludes my briefing, and now open for any questions.
All right, do we have any questions for Mr. Deschamps? Kim.
Good morning, Kim Ray Cap. And Mr. Deschamps, I don't know if you can speak for USC Aiken or not, but I ride by that new building quite frequently, and it's very
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
I just want to know, is that going to be, or is any part of that building going to be available for public use?
Correct. Most definitely, that's one of the funding points for us, to have more public meeting space, to collaborate with community academia, those kind of things.
Okay.
And so definitely, it's in the right spot too, so you don't have to worry about badging and access and all that kind of stuff. It's
Okay.
great. And the National Lab will be manning that for us. It really, so if you want to get on the calendar or have events or be informed, work through the National Laboratory.
And expanding on that a little bit, pardon me, our lease ends in June for this space. Our intent is to move our CAB meetings over there. We're on the schedule, so we're hoping probably starting in September to start picking up, but we'll let that, we have the dates out, but we don't have the locations. We're hoping to solidify that later.
Wonderful, because I'm on several other boards, and sometimes we struggle having meetings in buildings, even in city buildings. And so we're always looking for new venues for things like that. And every time I ride by there, I said, there must be some meeting rooms in that building somewhere.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And there's also, you may have heard another investment by the National Guard, about $20 million investment there. So it's a lot of, build it in there will come. So other things are starting to kind of piggyback. So there will be other opportunities to
Great, thank
do
you.
things.
Wonderful. Thank you, Edwin. All right, we can move on to the EPA update. John?
Hello, Ken. And I think I may have mentioned in the March meeting, we had a new regional administrator. For those aren't familiar, every EPA region, like a lot of federal regional offices, have usually one political appointee, a regional administrator, Kevin McComber. And EPA just went through a second buyout on the department. She had another one in April. We'll probably know in the next 45 days about exactly who will be leaving retirement or however they decide. As far as SRS activities, I think as most of you know, we have a 5-year review every year because we have so many sites past remedies that maybe 12 or 13 years ago, instead of having one big giant review every 5 years, we break them up into categories. So this year's is groundwater remedies. We've actually already commented, and I'm sure the state's commented. Now the next step, we get the responses back from DOE and their contractors, and then we work out if we have any differences before we move forward. So that's where we are on that one. We have I think, proposed plan for L area coming up in June, and that's different than what you're going to hear in the L area conversation in the next talk. This is some of the older, mostly construction waste, I would call it, that's common around all the big reactor areas. We had these areas around P and R. So this one's around L. In fact, this one is not going to be much at all. It'll be mostly land use controls. It's very little contamination, but it is one that, deserve, okay, what do we need to do here? Let's investigate to see if there's an issue. And so proposed plan means, if you're not familiar, that's when, right before you go to a record of decision with exactly what option we've all agreed to do, we open up to the public for their comment period. So that'll be coming, or at least the draft will be coming for us in June. I just happened to write down when she mentioned PFAS. If you're not that familiar with PFAS at Savannah River, the main area is D area, which is already D area groundwater, which is already undergoing CERCLA investigation. And I think we're having a meeting in the fall to go over a second round of sampling that the site has done to see if we need to do any more further with that. And as Edwin mentioned, we just met yesterday in Columbia at Susan's office to go over the preliminary cease waste removal for tanks 11 and 15. That got 2 for the price of 1. I think we were expecting 1 and got 2. So we're very excited to move along with all of those. And we had a lot of the people in this room were there giving some of their information on that. So I think that's all I had, unless you have questions.
Pat Kilroy, CAB. I've got one question on the PFAS. Have y'all established concentration?
Pat, make sure you speak into the mic for me, please.
Concentration of PFAS that you'll have to remove it?
We had an MCL that came out, and Jenna here may help me. The main PFAS had MCL that came out, I think, over a year ago, and we just had a decision update from our administrator of EPA that looks like that's going to remain in place. Some of the other ones called Gen X will not. I think they're, but that means we do have what we call a relevant appropriate requirement. If we have PFAS at D area that requires any kind of treatment or other type of monitored natural attenuation, whatever the decision is, we have a number to point to make sure we're under that number and whatever remedy that will meet that number. So we're happy to hear.
Phyllis.
Phyllis Britt, CAB. I'm not sure John is the one to answer this question, but it reminded me the conversation about L area. We had a recommendation that went forward to see about the possibility of L area someday becoming, a museum is not the right word, but I was just wondering if what y'all are doing, the evaluations y'all have made, if that would in any way inhibit or encourage or have nothing to do with whether that eventually happens.
Yeah, for these areas, it should have nothing to do with it. It's very minimal contamination that probably won't require any type other than
Okay,
putting
so
signs up.
that won't be the issue that holds us
And it's
back.
not, I don't think any of these areas are that close to the actual reactor area itself. So,
Gotcha, okay. Thank you.
but I encourage a museum for.
All right. Thank you, John. We'll move on to SCDES update. Susan?
Good morning. So I have a few updates for y'all today. And first, I just wanted to mention again, Crystal introduced herself when we did the introductions at the beginning, but welcome her to the CAB. She's the new office manager for the Aiken office, and so she'll be attending these meetings as well. So if you have a chance, stop by and say hi to her today. So Edwin and John have both mentioned the preliminary cease waste removal meeting that we had this week. It was actually yesterday, and for tanks 11 and 15. So that went well. We had a good briefing and good update, and are looking forward to receiving the official correspondence so that we can concur with the PCWR request on those 2 tanks. And I just want to highlight that, so in 2022, we renegotiated the liquid waste milestones and established these PCWR milestones and the closure milestones for grouting up the tanks. And they are well ahead of schedule on that. There are 3 PCWR milestones that they need to reach by the end of this calendar year, so December 31st of 2025. And once we are able to get the official paperwork in on these 2, they will have passed that. So they've already met 2 of the PCWRs for 2025. Earlier in December, I think you met. Yeah, so a year ahead of schedule, they met 2 of them. And so the 2 that we just talked about yesterday, one will complete 2025's milestone, and then the next one will be a 2026 milestone. So that's really great work, and we're really happy with that progress. And they've given us a heads up that there'll be some more PCWRs coming to us in this year. So we're looking forward to meeting again on that issue. I also wanted to update on some of the inspections that have been conducted out of our Aiken office. We do monthly ambient stream monitoring, so that's been conducted in April and in May since the last CAB meeting. There's also a monthly inspection for saltstone, and that was conducted also in April and just last week, May 13th. And then it looks like this week we've got a wastewater compliance meeting coming up, our inspection, which would be the approval to operate an industry or IDW inspection for a DWPF that would be coming up. And with that, I've finished with my updates. If there are any questions for me. Yes.
Pat, go ahead.
Pat Kilroy, CAB. I was just wondering, the stream monitoring and everything, has it increased over the last 5 years?
I do not know that question, or the answer to that question, and I'm not sure if Crystal knows that, but we could certainly get the information and get back to you on that.
I'd like to know.
Is there a specific chemical of concern, or just
Any
anything?
toxic radionuclide. How's
So you're
that?
looking at radionuclides. Okay. We will check in and let you know.
All right. Were there any additional questions for Susan? No? All right. Well, that concludes our agency updates. So that means it's break time. Let's take a 15-minute break. It is now 9:35, and we will come back to the room at about 10 minutes till. Sound like a plan? All righty. Thank you. Hi. I hope you all enjoyed your break. So before our break, we heard our agency updates and our update from the chair, and now it's time to hear about the L area with our L area update by Mr. Larry McDaniel.
Good morning. I'm kind of excited, actually. I usually have to do it right after lunch, so people are awake this time, so that's good news. As mentioned, I'm Larry McDaniel. I am the Spent Nuclear Fuel Program Manager, and we'll be going over L area update today. The agenda, we're going to talk about the mission, do a little basin overview, talk about the storage a little bit, show an example of CAS processing through pictures, talk about receipts and shipments out of L area, and then have the summary. I do it a little bit differently. I like to pull up the side. I know you guys have copies of it. If you don't, there's a set back there on the table you can grab. Do a kind of a high level, what the slide is about, and then we'll talk about it. So the program mission, is anybody not familiar with L area? Everybody's familiar with L area. That's awesome. So simply, our mission is to take spent nuclear fuel from foreign and domestic research reactors, and we safely process and store it in the basin until final disposition. We do have some legacy Savannah River Site nuclear materials that we store, and then we package and ship for disposition. There's a bullet down here at the bottom that says MOAs. When I first arrived at nuclear material stabilization, I started asking questions about authorities to receive and store this material. My boss, Bert Krapps, said he was unaware and asked me to go research it. So I dug in and found out that although there is NEPA coverage for this particular types of material, and there are regulatory coverage and records of decision that says the material can come here, there was nothing formally that said it will. There was nothing formally that said that we would take it and that we would accept the material that was being sent. So we began in 23 working with Oak Ridge, the HIFER program, and established our first ever memorandum of agreement stating that we would, according to the records of decision and the regulatory guidance that was in place, receive their fuel and store it and process it as time permitted for disposition. Fast forward a year, GAO came in and started asking questions about authorities to receive the material. So we showed them a copy of the MOA. Their recommendation in 24 was to go and generate the other missing MOAs to cover the DRR, the domestic research reactor and foreign research reactor fuels that we also received. So in 24, we worked real hard and got all of those other MOAs completed. The L Basin, this is where we store all of our spent nuclear fuel. It's a giant swimming pool. 3.5, 3.4 million gallons of water. It's anywhere from 17 to 50 feet deep. It's concrete, reinforced with steel. We have several configurations in the basin where we can store the different materials as they come in different stages. We care a lot about the clarity and purity of the water, and that's mostly because 90% of the work that happens in the basin happens underwater. So it's very important for our operators to be able to see what they're doing. Any questions, comments? When a cast is received, we unload it with some cranes. We've got a 120, 170 ton crane, 180 ton crane. We take the cast off of the truck. We place it in the water, remove the lid, remove the fuel, and put it in these buckets. Those are our temporary storage buckets. It goes into the bucket storage rack or the bucket storage row, depending on the size of the assembly that we've received. We reassemble and ship the cast back to its originator. We don't keep anything for long periods of time. Casts. We keep fuel for a long time. The extended basin storage is our largest storage area. That's where we keep all of our university fuels when they come in. We have 3,650 positions available. We currently have 3,048 occupied. We do have additional space if we need to create some additional storage capacity. We have racks that we've already procured and are in storage that we could set in the basin to extend that capacity a bit. Currently for Heifer, we can store 120 of those cores. This is what a Heifer core looks like. We have 76 in position. Last year, on the bucket storage racks, we only had the 4 occupied positions available. We have created some modifications to the storage racks to increase that, and we're waiting on some documentation updates for the facility now to increase that more up to a total of 29 positions. We've got some dry storage out there, but it's materials that have never been wet, never been in a reactor. These are examples of the casts we received today. So for this year, we're expecting 16 casts for domestic research reactors, 0 from foreign research reactors. A Heifer core comes 1 per cast. So when it says 12 cores, we're getting 12 shipments throughout the year. FY26, we're going to get 6 foreign research reactors and 13 domestic. GE 2000, this is the Heifer cast. These are shipments to H Canyon. This is where, and I think at some point you will receive a H Canyon briefing. This is where we do all our dissolutions. This is what we talked about. I almost started the briefing thanking Mr. Richards for briefing L area for me, but I changed my mind.
All right. Well, thank you, Larry.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Just curious, what percentage of fissionable uranium is still in these rods?
I cannot answer that question in this environment.
Yeah, you tell me later. Thank you.
It's highly enriched uranium. That's all I can tell you.
All right. Marty?
You used the term final disposition.
Yes, the repository.
Is there one?
Sure, on paper.
Yucca Mountain's gone. What progress are you making? And
That is true. They are working that at levels way higher than I am aware of. I cannot comment on a Yucca Mountain or a Yucca Mountain-like facility.
it's sort of important.
It is. It is very important. But today, the most important thing is that the material we have stored, the spent nuclear fuel that we have in L area, is extremely safe. The reason it's in water is because it's the perfect shield for all the material we have.
So it won't slow the neutrons to thermal level and make them more reactive?
There is no heat in the pool. It runs an average of 52 degrees, and we don't have cooling in place. It's just naturally cold.
So how does it get below ambient temperature?
Say that again?
How does it get below ambient temperature if it's at 52?
Because it's-
That's below room temperature.
Because it's indoors. It's a 6-foot cement wall underground. That's how.
Marty, just to clarify on something a little bit, one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of information on the final repository that work, because that work is being done under the Office of Nuclear Energy, is or the Office of Environmental Management. We might find out before the newspapers, but maybe like a day. So, just to let you know, like that's one of the reasons why we can't really talk to it. It's not our project.
I understand, but.
And I know why you ask. Yes.
They are working it. They are working a solution. We don't necessarily know what that solution is or what it consists of, but it is being actively worked even through Congress.
Just trust us is what they're saying?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Just trust us?
I have no control over that.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional, Kim?
Kim Ray Cab. This is more a curiosity question than anything else. In your presentation earlier, you said you had 34 countries we were receiving.
That's true. But that's
waste
been through the history of our program.
And that's fine. My question was, how is that waste transported here by ship or?
Yes,
So it comes on a ship? Okay.
it does.
All right, that's my question.
And rail and road.
Okay, yeah. But I mean
Depending on
from
which country.
Okay, yeah, I mean from the country to the continental U.S.
Yes, it depends on the country.
Okay.
If it's across the
Canada,
water, it'll
okay.
come on boat. If it's connected by land, it could come on rail or in a truck.
Okay.
Big truck.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions for Larry? Thank you, Larry. All right, Mr. I don't think so. Nope. All right. Now we will have our liquid waste retrieval and targeting high-risk tanks presented by Mr. James Harris.
Hey, good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you and talk about, what we describe as the high-risk tanks, and then talk a little bit about why they're high risk, but most importantly, celebrate our success in the removal of the waste. Susan and John and Edwin have already stolen a little bit of my thunder, but you'll hear the term PCWR a few times, preliminary cease waste removal, and I'll show you some of our successes as a a summary of what we've talked about before. So that's the purpose of the presentation. So I thought probably should talk about why are they high risk. So what makes one of our tanks high risk? It's the age. Some of the tanks, the type 1s, which is what we're working on now, were built in 51 and 53. I was thinking about it as I was sitting in the chair. My dad was just born when they were building these tanks, so they're pretty old. And my dad's a young man. They're located in the water table. I've got a quick illustration to show you what I mean by building in the water table. It's quite, I use the word entertaining when you look back in 51, 52 and what we were doing. And when I asked the question through some of the team, I said, did they know the water table was there? And it was low, and the answer was yes. They were actually pumping water out as they were constructing the tanks, managing the water. So, and then the last piece is the known primary tank leak sites. So the tanks that we're working on that are high risk, they do have the known leak sites. We've known these leak sites for years. We've managed them. The good news is there are no environmental leaks, and we know that through our groundwater monitoring program, which you asked about earlier for a different discussion. And I want to highlight, there is a document. You can go on Google and search for annual radioactive waste tank inspection. It's a public available document. I did Google it just to make sure I didn't tell you something that wasn't accurate. And sure enough, it's there, and it's a read. I wouldn't call it an interesting read, but there's a lot of information there for the public. So here's just a general depiction of the Type 1 tanks. Again, we talk about when it was constructed. There are 8 of these tanks in the F tank farm, and then 4 of the tanks in the H tank farm. And I've got another slide that will show you how they're strategically located, and then how you'll see what we're working on to deal with both of these Type 1 tanks. And then, of course, we have the Type 2 tanks. These are a little bit newer, only by a few years, and they're in the 13 through 16 area. And again, that's our focus right now with Savannah River mission completion, is to get rid of or to remove the waste from these tanks and then eventually close them. So here's a slide that shows kind of a good graphic of what we mean by in the water table. You see tanks 9, 10, 11, and 12. We refer that to the hole because it's literally in a hole, very large one. And you can see the mean sea level, which is just a standard of the depth of the water, or height of the water in this case, and the tanks are fully submerged. We don't see active in leakage into the area, but that is what we mean by in the water table. And then, of course, the Type 2 tanks, they're in a different location. They're just up onto the tank top. They're not quite submerged, but they still have a portion of the tank that is in the water table, which is, again, why we refer these to as the high-risk tanks, and which is why we're focused very heavily on removing the waste and closing these tanks. So here's just an example of a primary tank wall. This is tank 15. You can see where there's been cracks in the primary wall of the tank, and then the salt nodules build up in there. Most of the cracks are typically where a weld has occurred when it was fabricated, and those welds haven't survived the 50 plus years that they've been in place. And again, I'll reiterate, we do not have any environmental impacts. The annulus has stayed intact, and we continue to confirm that through groundwater monitoring. This is just a ventilation duct that's in place to maintain the negative flow of air going into the tank. So now let's talk a little bit about the accomplishments for DOE Savannah River site. So we've already talked about preliminary cease waste removal. Last year we completed tanks 9 and 10, and that was ahead of schedule. As Susan mentioned, anywhere from 7 to 12 months. This year, we're working on 5 tanks. Just yesterday, we presented on behalf of the DOE our PCWR results for tanks 11 and 15. That letter should come over in the next couple of days, gain concurrence, and we'll declare those complete as well. And then for what we're working on now is tank 3. We're in salt distillation waste removal efforts. Once we get out of the steam outage, we'll resume those efforts. And then we're moving on to tank 8. So tank 8, all the waste has been removed, and we've got the samples taken from any of the remaining material in the tank, and that's off at the lab being analyzed. And then finally, on tank 14, we're moving on to tying in all the final power and the transfer line so we can remove the waste in there. We had to wait on tank 14 because I had to get 15 done, and as we just described, 15 is now done, so I can transfer the power over to tank 14 and then tie in the transfer line from 14 to tank 13. Right here are all the type 1 tanks that are down, that are over an F-tank farm. Here is the 4 tanks that are in the water table that I mentioned, fully submerged, and then here are the 4 tanks that are above they're still in the water table, but slightly above that. And you can see our concentration is type 1 tanks, and type 2 tanks. Again, all the high-risk tanks. And this comes through strong collaboration between ourselves, DOE, South Carolina, and the EPA, as mentioned earlier in the FFA agreement, and which is what we're working on. And then in previous contracts, we have closed a couple of the tanks that are in black. And then tank 7, so a couple of reasons. So tanks 1 and 2, those are going to, tank 2, we should achieve PCWR next year in calendar year 26. And then tank 1, we should achieve that in calendar year 27. So once I get 1 and 2 modified and ready for waste removal, then we will close those or achieve PCWR. Tank 7 remains the last tank in that particular area because that's the only way for the waste to be removed out of that particular area is through tank 7. Similar discussion on tank 13. The only way to get the waste out of 14 and 15 is through 13. And so when we achieve 14 this year, we'll move over to tank 13 next year and we'll achieve PCWR on tank 13 next year. So a lot's going on and we've been very successful in our efforts. So here's just a quick summary of the FFA agreement. As Susan pointed out, here's the by calendar year, the number of tanks that we have to achieve for a total of 16 for PCWR, and the number of tanks we have to achieve through operational closure. And as was pointed out earlier, we're well ahead of schedule with the 2 that we declared yesterday, or getting ready to declare. We will have achieved all of the commitments for calendar year 25, and we're well ahead of schedule for calendar year 26, 27, and the remaining years. So we've accelerated. And I'll go into a little bit about how we were able to do that. And then for operational closure, we're in the process of sampling tank 9 now. There's a total of 18 samples that we have to get from the tank, and we're at sample number 13. So we're moving very quickly on the sampling, and then that goes to analysis, and then we create a lot of documentation supporting the approval of the final closure, which again will go to South Carolina and the EPA. So how are we able to achieve a lot of this? So workplace efficiency. So when I first took over the program, I felt like there was an opportunity where we could remove some of the inefficiencies for our workforce. Primarily, it's our construction craft personnel that are doing the modifications on the tanks. And so the opportunity was to really look at what we're doing and what we're not doing to make them able to do their job efficiently. So we've worked through a lot of that inefficiencies, and we've improved the work flow, and then we're getting work done a little bit quicker than we originally anticipated. There's been a couple of tanks, one so far, which is tank 4, that we were able to achieve PCWR without tank modifications. So we looked at, in the past years, we called it bulk waste removal. And then we've done all of the work up front with older pumps. And there was an opportunity to not do the tank modifications, remove the waste that was in the tank after we achieved BWR, and do sampling. We were successful with tank 4. Tank 8 is another tank, as I mentioned a little bit ago. The samples have been pulled. They're under analysis. Expect to declare that one preliminary cease waste removal status in June of this year. Why are those important to our success? This is a cost avoidance and allows us to reinvest the funding that we had anticipated for those and reinvest it back into the program and accelerate more tanks and achieve the finish in 15, which is one of our goals. I mentioned that we're doing some, to achieve PCWR, we have to do a visual inspection of the inside of the tanks. The way we have done that in the past is we've used installed cameras, and they're still cameras. And we have limited access to the tank top based upon what we call risers. And so you cannot get a good view of what's in the remaining in the tank using still cameras. So we've introduced the use of drones inside of the tanks. To be honest with you, I was not a fan. I didn't see it happening. I'm kind of an older school guy, but within 2 months, I was proven wrong, and I was glad to have been proven wrong. And now I'm kind of addicted to drones. They're the best thing that's ever happened. And I'll show you a short video of flying into one of the tanks recently, and to kind of give you an idea. So why is that important? Well, it gives us better footage of what remains in the tank. It gets done a lot faster. And we're now taking the drones. What used to take about a week to map out a tank, we get it done in about 3 hours. So it's amazing how much work, and it's less people involved. Less people is, again, cost avoidance, and then we get to reinvest that money back into the program. We're also using drones. We're testing using them in the way of sampling the tanks. So when we sample, not only to achieve PCWR, but also for tank or operational closure, we're going to use a drone. Right now with a crawler, so this is a kind of a robotic crawler that we're using, has a long tether coming all the way up to the top of the tank and limited visibility, and we're driving it around the tank, going through a bunch of obstacles called cooling coils and other debris, and we'll see a little bit of that in the video. It takes at best 3 months to get the samples that we need to achieve operational closure. It's our estimation that we'll do that in less than a week's time once we get the drones in full use. We've done a lot of mock-ups in a cold environment to kind of test our process. And if not later this week, definitely next week, we're actually going to fly another drone into the tank and physically pull the sample and bring it up the tank top, prepare it for shipment out of the tank farms and to a laboratory for offsite analysis, just kind of test that whole suite. So again, huge effort there. Another effort that's allowed us to save time and money is augmenting lab sample analysis. We've have a contract with a lab here in South Carolina that we're sending a lot of our sample analysis now. It's cheaper, and it's also very quick in getting the analysis back. So that's been beneficial. And then resequencing of tank isolation activities. When I looked at the sequence, the way we've always done it, I'm sure you've heard that term in your career, no matter where you're at. That's kind of the way we always did it. Started looking at better ways, and I'll show you a diagram that by kind of redirecting some sequencing, we've been able to save some time and accelerate. And then tank sampling. The way we always did it was always like a Monday through Thursday, kind of a casual approach to sampling. We've put crews on a 24/7 calendar, so they're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so we took what was a 9-month activity and shrunk it down to 3 months. And again, that's with the crawler. I expect to see that much quicker once we institute the use of drones. And then one of the things that is really going to be helpful, John and Susan and her team were all part of this effort about a month and a half ago, where we had what we called a rapid improvement event. And when we looked at the durations of getting all of the paperwork in line after we get sample analysis back, we brought everybody into a room and said, okay, how can we be more efficient in the back end to get approval on the to allow me to grout the tanks? And so with collaboration with all those agencies and our customer, we're able to, on paper, get it down to about 7 or 8 months from about a 15-month trip. So that's a significant savings in schedule. And so when I say on paper, that's what we currently have in the schedule. And we know that we're not going to be perfect out of the gate, and we're going to have some hiccups, but that's currently where we're at. And so that's just a great testimony, I think, to your comment earlier, Phyllis, when you talked about interaction with DOE, the regulators, and even the contractor at Savannah Riverside. It's very strong, and this is just a testament to that. So mapping of the tanks, here's kind of the boring view. It's not, you can't really see, and because you can't see in the limited, out in the peripheral areas is tough. You have to make some educated guesses on what's in the tank or what remains in the tank. And so with the drone, it's much better. So if you don't mind just showing that video real quick. There's no sound, but it just sounds, if you've ever heard a drone, it's very noisy, so we didn't bring that up. So there's a glove bag that sits on top of the tank. Just for time, I cut that out of there. This is the drone going down into the annulus, into the tank itself. And now that you get it down into the tank, you can see all the cooling coils. And if you can imagine a crawler trying to navigate through there, it literally takes hours to get it from one spot of the tank to another. And the camera and the lighting on the drone is far better than what we have in the still cameras. You can see some of the dried up remaining solids in the tank. Here's the cooling coils. Here's the pillars that hold or support the tank top. That's looking up again to the top of the tank. And so the holes that you see are the risers that I mentioned that are limited in there. And so this is the remaining material left behind. Just let that finish out. And it's amazing to watch the Calm Pilot. They're literally sitting with a screen and just flying that thing around. I would have crashed that thing a minute ago and cost us a few dollars. And then they said, try it again, and I would have repeated the crash. So I'm just not that savvy. I never played Xbox or any of that stuff. So but that's all it is. If you have, it's all it is, an Xbox controller. And so it's pretty amazing to watch the workforce drive these things. I can take it from there. Okay, so I mentioned earlier, kind of accelerated by kind of resequencing some of our work. So these are just 4, actually it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tanks. I can really count. 5 of the currently 24 tanks that I'm managing through this effort. But you can see the very top line for each one of the tanks is kind of our baseline schedule. And when we looked at the acceleration and kind of resequencing things, we were able to take PCWR, We weren't really able to impact that as much because, again, that's a lot of labor and there's a lot of effort there. The biggest impact is operational closure. You can see the red stars. On average, it's 2 to 2.5 years acceleration to the left to achieve operational closure. And that's been a huge effort. When I talked about the kind of what we resequenced, the isolation design and the isolation field work, it was realized that we don't need to do that until the tanks have actually been grouted. What we do is we enter into what we call operational or closure mode. So we've isolated the ability for any waste to be introduced into the tank, and we've isolated any way for hazardous constituents to be introduced in the tank. And then we've gone through the sampling and analysis and the closure documentation, gain approval from the regulators to grout. And then when we have achieved what I'll call groupings of that approval and grouted, we'll go in and accomplish the isolation design and field work on the back end of that. And we only do that at one time versus every tank. And again, that saves a lot of time and money. And that money, that cost avoidance, I should say, gets reinvested back into the program and continues to allow us to reinvest and accelerate the program. And so those are some of the examples there. And that's it for me, unless there are questions.
All right. Thank you. Pat.
Pat Kilroy, Cab. First of all, I'd like to say this is the first time I've seen a cut view of the tanks, and I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
This is the first. But I've got some questions. And, looking at the pictures inside the tank, I can see the corrosion, and that looks like where the wells are made.
Yeah, so is that the slide that showed there? That's
yeah.
Sorry. So what this is this is the salt. So this is the primary wall here of the tank. So vast majority of the waste, if not all of it, is on the other side of that. And then this is where we've had leak sites, and this is the salt nodules. It's not corrosion. It's just where a weld, and this is an example where we've just this one's actually a crack. It's not a weld, but over the years that has developed.
Okay. So what do y'all do about the cracks?
There's not much we can do about them, and that's other than, so there's a couple of things that we have done. We have a system, we call it a contingency transfer system. So in this case, this crack was weeping quite a bit, and so we had ready to deploy a contingency transfer system, which allowed us to put a pump into the annulus and pump the waste back into the tank to prevent the annulus from filling up. And then we were prepared, if we had to, if that crack got too bad, we would transfer the waste into another tank. And so, but this is why we have accelerated the closure of these tanks because of their history and age.
Okay, I assume though that the salt is on the wells, and because of dissimilar metals or something.
Yeah, I'm not a metallurgist, so I couldn't have that conversation with you.
And the other thing I was wondering, because we discussed before, like, the wells, that these tanks were done in, 50, 51?
Right.
They didn't do X-rays on the wells, right?
That's right. So, I mean, one of our core values is continuous improvement. So, to your point, 50 to 51, the industry has improved its ability to understand failure points in welds and metals, and we wouldn't repeat this type of workmanship in the current future.
Okay, I'm just seeing what you had to work with back then.
That's right.
It is what it is.
Hey, and it still lasted quite a few years. I don't want to be seen as talking badly about the previous workforce, because it did an incredible job for what they
had
did
at that time.
Yes, sir.
I understand that fully. The other thing, and see, I never understood the annulus, tank. What if it leaks?
If it leaks, then we obviously have a bigger problem. And using the same contingency transfer system, we would remove all the waste, get it out of the annulus, and accelerate that. But we haven't had that problem.
And so y'all take it, you clean it out, and then y'all go fill it with grout.
That's right. That's right. In fact, this tank here, all this waste here, we introduced water back into there. We dissolved the solid back into a liquid form, and we removed all of this, put it back into the primary. And once it got back into the primary, we transferred it out of the tank completely. So in these tanks where we did have some waste in the annulus, we've removed that.
Okay. Now,
Pat, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I would like to go ahead and move to Phyllis, and then can we come back to you?
absolutely.
Thank you. Phyllis, what's your question?
She has a book.
I see that.
All right, let me find it. On slide 3, you have a I just, as a non-technical person, it says known primary tank leak sites, no environmental leaks. What does that mean?
So the primary tank is for a type 1 tank, it's 750,000 gallon volume tank. And on the outside of that tank is a smaller space, which is known as the annulus. And so the larger tank, through some of the cracks that we just talked about, waste did leak from the primary into the annulus. And so the annulus is that final step to prevent waste from getting into the environment.
Now okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. All right, Pat.
Okay, let me see where my thoughts were. But, but if you fill it with grout, the grout gets hard.
That's correct.
How do you take it back out?
We don't take it back out. It stays in place.
Okay, so then if you have a leak, what do you do?
So there's no leaks at that point. All the waste is removed. All of the infrastructure has been removed. The tank is just sitting there. Picture an empty coffee cup, and the coffee pot has been taken out of the kitchen. There's no way to get anything back into the coffee cup.
Okay, and the bottom of the tanks, though, you're going to have residual plutonium, uranium, and blah, blah, blah.
Correct.
And the grout is water-based with calcium hydroxide, right?
I don't know the specifics, but I understand your point. So we are grouting the tanks with an approved grout formula that has been proven to meet our performance analysis for the closure of not only the tank farms, for both tank farms. And that PA assumes over like 5,000 years, don't quote me on the exact length of period, that grout eventually does break down and is no longer doing its primary function. Again, that's a 5,000-year trip. And then by that time, the radionuclide, for the most part, the radionuclides, the ones of concern, have gone through several half-lives. And so when we look at how how everything performs in PA space, and then of course you prohibit land development, but you also anticipate probably one of my relatives in the near future that's going to ignore the signs, go out there and drill a water well or put his cattle on the land and start eating. We look at what those impacts are as well.
And
that was a joke. It probably won't be one of my relatives. At least I hope not. Yeah.
And the last question, so these tanks, as they sit now, you haven't had discernible leakage from these tanks in the last 5 years?
Well, outside of the tank, absolutely not. But we continue. So for tank 15, for example, in the last 5 years, we had the primary wall of the tank leaking into the annulus. But now that all the waste has been removed, it's not leaking anymore because there's nothing in there to leak.
And so if it doesn't get out of the annulus, it's no problem then?
Absolutely correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Were there any additional questions for James? Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, while we're actually waiting on our last presenter, if you'd like, we can actually switch things up. We can move on to some board business if you'd like in that process while we're waiting. I'm sorry? Oh, she's here? Oh, okay, cool. Oh, awesome. Hey, how you doing? Well, why don't you, are you? Yeah. I know you just walked in, so welcome. Well, we can take another break. Why don't we take about a 10-minute break while Susan gets set up? How about that? Ladies and gentlemen, this is your 2-minute warning. We have 2 minutes before we resume. Yeah. Oh, hi. All right. Well, we've heard the L area update, liquid waste retrieval, and now it's time to hear about the lower 3 runs remediation completion with Susan Blass.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I love talking about lower 3 runs and the stream systems at Savannah River site. So this is lower 3 runs remediation completion, and we'll talk about what that is. Part of the lower 3 runs integrator operable unit, and I'll also explain what that is as well. I'm sure we have some new players in here. So the SRS integrator operable units, that's what we refer to as the stream systems. They were added to the FFA, the Federal Facility Agreement, in 1997. The SRS is divided into 6 watersheds that align with the stream systems at SRS. You can see them color-coded somewhat here. Upper 3 runs, 4 Mile Branch, Penn Branch, Still Creek, and lower 3 runs on the far right, which is the one that we're going to talk about today. Now, a watershed is just the land area that receives drainage to a common resource. So the common resource here would be the stream systems. And it also includes the Savannah River, which our stream systems on site discharge to ultimately. Okay, so you'll see that section in blue, Savannah River floodplain. So the SRS stream systems are integrators of contaminants within the watershed. So anything, whether it's atmospheric deposition or whatever, would fall into the watershed and into those stream systems. So that's why we monitor the stream systems. So the purpose of the program is to evaluate contaminants from operable units. So you may have heard them referred to before as waste units. These are basins, disposal piles, spills, even remnants of post-operational facilities. We look at those to evaluate contaminants that may end up in our stream systems. We assess human health risk based on various scenarios. Recreational fishermen for fish, consumption and sediment exposure, adolescent trespasser, hypothetical resident, because this is DOE property, and an on-site worker. So these are industrial workers that work at Savannah River site. We also assess stream health. So we look in fish and macroinvertebrates to see how healthy the stream system is, see if we're having any issues, and determine if early actions are required. That's what the whole program does, the Integrated Operable Unit program. Now, final decisions can be made on the IOUs when all the waste units within that IOU, all contaminant sources have been defined. Okay, and there may be remedial actions based on those. So lower 3 runs is the first stream system, the first IOU, to reach a final remedial decision. And the record of decision, this was back in 2021, outlined the requirements for the remedial action. So this is part of our FFA submittals to South Carolina Department of Environmental Services and United States EPA. And DOE is the 3rd member of that FFA. So it's a core team that decides the remedial actions for Savannah River site. So lower 3 runs, beautiful. It's a bottomland hardwood stream system. Includes water, tupelo, cypress habitat, which you're seeing here. It also includes Parr Pond, which is the largest reservoir on Savannah River site and part of lower 3 runs. You may have heard of Parr Pond. Parr Pond received, it was cooling water, constructed to receive effluent from R and P reactor. Again, we're talking about lower three runs. So this whole watershed, which includes Parr Pond, also includes bottomland hardwood, Tupelo forest, as you get closer to the Savannah River. So there's, the watershed is divided administratively into three sections. There's an upper, which is above Parr Pond Dam. That's the top portion. Middle, and then lower, which is buffered by DOE property. Okay, it's a narrow strip of DOE property along the lower three runs tail section. You may have heard of that. So the watershed, again, includes R reactor, P reactor, pre-cooler ponds that go to the larger reservoirs, and then Parr Pond, which were cooling water reservoirs during reactor operations. So the discharges from reactor operations include releases of radionuclides. Cesium-137 is the primary. Also cobalt-60 to a lesser extent. And cobalt-60, so you know, the half-life, the time it takes for half of it to dissipate is like 5 years. Okay, Cesium-137 is like a 30-year half-life. So Cesium-137 is going to be around longer than cobalt. Cobalt's pretty much gone at this point. Now the discharges also included mercury. We pumped water from the Savannah River up into the reactor systems for cooling, and those got discharged into our ponds and reservoirs for cooling. So we also have mercury as well as Cesium-137. Remedial action for the middle and lower, so this is the part below Parr Pond Dam, the middle and lower, was completed in 2012. We used land use controls, fences, signs, as well as removal of sediment from three, about an acre location, one in the middle section and two in the lower section. So the remedial action implemented for middle and lower remains protective of human health and the environment. And the remedial action for upper subunit above Parr Pond was completed in 2022, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So the upper subunit, again, this is above Parr Pond Dam. I'm going to walk you through it briefly. Our reactor began operations in '53. This is located right here. Before the creation of Parr Pond Dam, the discharges went through Joyce Branch, which is the old discharge canal, and just went down into lower three runs, part of the normal stream system. Parr Pond was created in 1958. Pre-cooler ponds and canal systems from our reactor take the northern route and discharge up into the upper arm of Parr Pond. Effluent discharges ceased in 1964. So now you can see why the half-life of cobalt makes a difference. Half-life every 5 years. So the rule of thumb is radioactivity would be decreased to pretty much background within like 7 to 10 half-lives. It's kind of the rule of thumb. Most people say 7. Let's see. P reactor began operations in '54. So here's P reactor down here. It's actually on the borderline of lower three runs watershed and Still Creek. So prior to Still Creek, or prior to Parr Pond, the discharges from P reactor went down to Still Creek. After the creation of Parr Pond, it went through a different canal system, Pond 2, 4, 5, and into Pond C, and down through the middle arm of Parr Pond. And then effluent discharges ceased in 1987 for P reactor. Oh, and that just shows the way the water circulates overall. Problems warning action for the upper subunit. So again, I mentioned Cesium-137, also cobalt-60 to a lesser extent. Mercury in fish tissue is present due to pumping the water from the Savannah River that had a mercury load. Fish, of course, also contain 137. So this is why we look at a recreational fisherman exposure to determine what cleanup levels need to be set. And just a reminder that fishing is not prohibited at SRS. I know people dream about fishing in Parr Pond, but it's only allowed for research and monitoring purposes. So sample locations with sediment soil above principal threat source material. This is a higher level, 1 in 1,000 additional cancer risk is how it's calculated from the EPA guidance is 144 picocuries a gram. So there were samples within our discharge canal, 2 in Joyce Branch and 2 in Pond B that were at those elevated levels. So this would mean some type of action is required to protect workers. So the remedial actions, upper subunit, there were 3 components. One is land use controls with monitored natural recovery. So land use controls is like the signs and the fences. Monitored natural recovery is the monitoring that we'll be doing over the time period since the remedial action has been complete. The second component was excavation, treatment, and disposal of that principal threat source material samples in our discharge canal, and then maintain water levels in the ponds. It specifies Pond B and Par Pond, but Pond C is also hydrologically connected, so whatever level Par Pond is, Pond C mirrors that level. So it also applies to that. So maintain water in ponds really means maintain the dam structures to keep those contaminants underwater. So this is what land use control signs look like. The danger sign, do not enter water bodies, no fishing allowed. So the land use control boundary is the line that goes around all the canals and around Par Pond. Okay, so in order to enter that, you have to get permission on the site if there's work that you need to do. There's also 2 gate locations. So the sign locations are these purple on access roads that can approach the system. You'll see a sign, it'll give you a picture of the area you need to avoid. And then there were 2 gates that were installed by Joyce Branch. There's also worker controls, kind of like what I mentioned, and then deed restrictions for the land because there's contamination left in place. This is what the gates look like approaching Joyce Branch. You can see the signage. So another worker protection kind of issue. Joyce Branch, this is what it looks like now. Just a small stream system. During reactor discharge, the water levels were much higher than they show now. So that's our discharge canal, the old discharge canal. So monitoring consists of aerial gamma surveys. We actually do those from helicopters or hopefully in the future by drone. Fish collections, we'll be collecting cesium-137 and mercury, Pond B and Par Pond, so fishable streams where you get large fish. We'd like to monitor those levels over time. And then supplemental sediment soil sample, if we see something on aerial surveys that kind of give us an idea that there may be migration or something or changes in levels, we can collect sediment samples. So monitoring will support the 5-year remedy reviews. So the rule of thumb is if there's waste left in place, you have to do some ongoing monitoring and reporting. So we'll be reporting on lower 3 runs every 5 years. And these reports, there's 3 types of reports, but this one is the Savannah River site operable units with native soil covers and or land use controls. So that's where lower 3 runs falls in. And then the monitoring plan will be reevaluated over time. And will be evaluated after cesium-137 levels decay below those PTSM high threshold levels. Okay, so this is the location in our canal where the sediment was removed. You see the little pink flagging kind of outlines the area of excavation based on the sampling that was conducted there. So the site had to be prepared. This is what it looked like to begin with, just a stream system along a canal. We needed access for the equipment to come in, so land clearing, trail cutting. No root balls were removed to avoid soil disturbance, so we're considering keeping everything in place, so trees were cut to ground surface and left. Erosion control measures were installed. Here you can kind of get a vision of that. There was also sediment barrier placed in the canal as well to keep sediment from discharging further down in the canal. So this was new for us. Aqua barriers were inflated using the canal water. Acts as a coffer dam to segregate that area. You can still see the little pipes where the area of excavation is. The water was removed from that area. We had a little alligator. He looked like he was the size that his mama probably already shooed him off, so he didn't really have anywhere else to go, but he kept showing up on some of our field days. So this turned out to be very effective. The only thing we had to do was put these little pilings in to keep the aquifer barrier from kind of pushing out. So, every time you try something new, you got to have some workarounds. Now, we used waste lock as a treatment after dewatering. It's an absorbent. I kind of consider it sort of like what you'd find in a baby diaper. It absorbs the liquid. So that was put down over the excavation area after the water was removed. Then we excavated the sediments and the drying agent. So a depth of 1 foot, 500 square foot area was removed. The sediment was placed into sacks, so 1 cubic yard sacks that were excavated. The treatment material was also included in the sacks to help absorb moisture, to hold up that liquid in removing the sediment. So a total of 21 waste disposal sacks were used. This shows them lifting them out and putting them to the bin. Covers were placed to keep rain and that kind of thing off. And they were sent to, so the contaminated sediment, cesium-137, sent to the SRS area low-level waste facility for disposal. Let's see, we did confirmation sampling afterwards to make sure that the excavation was complete and successful. So all samples were below PTSM value, quite below. Excavation was considered complete after receipt of that confirmation sampling. That meant no more dredging would be required or excavation. So the maintaining water in the pond systems, this is allowing the dams and facility structures to remain in place to hold water. We do have the ability to still pump water from the river if needed for Par Pond if levels go down. Water minimizes access, of course, because of the submerged sediment, and it also prevents exposure, so that's the concern here, exposure to human health. And the levels aren't high enough to be an issue for ecological receptors. And again, just a reminder that water serves as a natural shield against radiation exposure. This is showing Pond B. You can see there's a little boat. What's the word? Well, I'll show it to you. Word escapes me. So there is ongoing research occurring in Par Pond. And with fish collections upcoming, we'll also have to do some surveying as well. So the future land use for lower 3 runs is primarily for environmental ecological research. Okay, you'll see one of the SRL students was trained there. Par Pond was her research site. 5-year remedy reviews will be required, so we'll do additional data collections and additional reporting over time. Great place to be a graduate student. If you have kids or students, have them apply. Great research opportunities there. Now the final inspection, that's what shows that the remediation was complete. So we had a final inspection for the excavation and access gate installations. That was in May 2023. Land use controls, it took longer. There were 53 signs. That was complete in July of 2023. So the completed remedial action from the upper subunit means that all the remedial action for the whole lower 3 runs is complete. We already did the middle and lower. This was the upper unit. The documentation ties all 3 together with the complete remedial action for the whole lower 3 runs IOU. Now we did have substantial cost savings, looked at various alternatives such as capping, excavation, land use controls, and picked those 3. Land use controls, ongoing monitoring, keeping the pond level waters up, maintaining those structures, and the excavation at our canal. Protection of over 30 miles of canals and streams. This is what I'm most excited about. It's still aquatic habitat out there. Protection over 3,000 acres of aquatic habitat. And we can also use this approach for other stream systems on Savannah River site when we get to that point, when the remedial decisions are made for the other units and production facilities. And I like showing this at the end. This is the green emerald is what we refer to it. Savannah River site. You can see the land encroaching upon Savannah River site. And you see the Savannah River and our stream systems, Salkehatchie, Edisto. We need these protected areas for the habitats that they support and the waterfowl and flyways and that kind of thing. And we hope we can continue to keep you up on activities from the integrated WAPL units. So I can answer any questions if you have questions. The remedial documents are available, public reading room. I assume you know how to reach that. There's an Aiken DOE reading room, and they're available online. So any of the documents associated with our cleanup is available.
All right. Thank you so much, Susan.
Okay.
I saw Phyllis, your card went up first. Thank you.
Phyllis Britt, Cab. I have two questions. One I should have asked 6 years ago, probably. Does PAR stand for anything?
P and R.
I thought maybe.
I guess it could have been RAP, but it's PAR.
Okay.
Yeah, so for P and R reactor.
Yeah, okay. Then the second question is mercury levels. What do y'all do anything about that? What do you do?
Well, so the levels of mercury that we have in our system are the same as in the Savannah River. So it's kind of everywhere in the environment. A lot of it has to do with atmospheric deposition, but also some mercury facilities that were in Augusta, Georgia. So mercury is here. There's a mercury cycle. It recirculates. It doesn't actually go away. There are some remedial activities that could be done. Some places where they have big mercury problems use like activated carbon to absorb it and that kind of thing. So if conditions get worse, there are things that can be done.
Okay, because I know when they drained Langley Pond, which has nothing to do with SRS, but because that was all Graniteville Company, but when they drained Langley, before then, they wouldn't let you swim in it. Now they'll let you swim in it, but I don't understand. I don't think they did any carbon.
Well, mercury is only an issue here. It's not in surface water. It's in fish tissue where the human health issue comes up.
Right.
I don't know if they fish in Langley Pond.
I think they do now. Which
yeah, I think they did some cleanup. I thought they
don't.
did some fill and that kind of thing. I read a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was PCBs. Was it PCBs in Langley Pond? I'm not sure.
Could be. I can't remember.
That's kind of what I remember.
Yeah, I know, as you said, when SRS does have those fishing events, nobody gets to take the fish home.
Right, it's just for the fun of fishing. And you can tell how much that student loved that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Marty?
Marty Ball, Cap. You said that the contaminated materials were put in bags and taken to the area for disposal. Disposal means, where is it now? What is it doing?
It'd be buried underground.
So it's still on the site?
It's still on the site.
Okay, do they have plans for?
There is a plan for closure eventually. I think that's at least 50 years out. Maybe someone else can speak to that. That's not really my area of expertise.
Okay, so it's still there?
So yeah, there's burial grounds on Savannah River site to receive radiological type materials.
Okay. Kim?
Kim Ray, CAB. First of all, Doctor, thank you for your presentation. I have two questions as well. The first one is, what was the date that the original sampling that identified that cesium contamination?
So this was a regular sampling location by environmental monitoring. If you go back and look at some of the environmental reports, the annual reports, you'll see this is a location that's been sampled over decades. So we kind of realized that area existed. When we did the lower three runs characterization, we did sampling all along the canal. That was still the hottest area. That's why that was targeted. So the start date from sampling, we only went 10 years back for data when we pulled data for the characterization, about 10 years. So I would say at least 10 years worth of data indicating that that was an elevated location.
Yeah, but was there a particular year that let you know that, hey, we need to do something now?
Well, we did the sampling in 2020. the characterization, so that's really when everything kind of kicked off. Well, 2000, yeah, I think it's 2020.
Okay. The other question was, you mentioned that, especially for Parr Pond, that keeping the water level up is part of the protective measures that you're taking. And when I ride around to like Lake Allatoona and some of these other big
drop.
recreational, right, with these droughts that we have from year to year, the lake's levels are really, really low. How do you all work with keeping that lake at the levels you want to keep it
Right.
at?
So we are very blessed. The stream systems that we have, Pond B, Parr Pond, they are self-maintaining. They maintain themselves. Most of the lakes that you see, they're recreational lakes. They're like TVA lakes, Corps of Engineers lakes. They bring them down in the fall to expect, rainfall. During the heavy seasons, they'll bring them down seasonally. They keep them up and elevated. So we don't do that on Savannah River site. The water levels maintain themselves. We go out weekly. We have an organization on site that goes out weekly and gets the water levels of all the reservoirs. So we keep a good eye on that.
Marty, did you have another question?
Oh,
Or do you want me to go back to, if you want me to go back to something, I can do that as well.
no, I just, what about the groundwater flow? Is there any chance of that changing?
So groundwater is not covered in the IOUs, but of course there's a lot of groundwater units around us where we monitor. Are you worrying about groundwater? So there is groundwater surface water exchange at certain locations.
Yeah, monitoring of surface waters doesn't necessarily indicate.
No, and
if it's
groundwater
full.
is a separate program, yes.
Okay.
So we are not seeing exchange. I mean, these water bodies hold water. We don't see groundwater, surface water exchange to any extent in Parr Pond and that kind of area. In upper reaches of Parr Pond, we do surface water sampling as well as groundwater sampling. In Joyce Branch, that's one of the areas that we do keep an eye on and we are monitoring. Cesium-137 is not an issue for the groundwater. So that would be part of our reactor groundwater. And actually, 2020, I think it was 2010 was when we did the characterization of. So it's probably a 10-year window from now. Doesn't seem that long ago.
I was just going to add one thing. We've had separate groundwater actions, like at P area. We did an early action P groundwater treatment. So that was separate than this whole thing. So groundwater is being addressed sometimes now, and as she said, sometimes later.
Yeah, but not part of the IOU program.
Right.
Separate.
Any additional questions or comments? Yes.
Hi, Susan Fulmer, DES. I don't have a question, but I did want to make a comment when Langley Pond came up. So this is not site related, but for Langley Pond, there is a fish consumption advisory for the pond. So if you can go to DES's website to get details on it, but there are a couple of fish that you can eat, 1 meal per week or 1 meal per month, but the advisory is to not eat any largemouth bass due to high levels of PCBs. So just wanted to make sure folks are aware of that.
That's a good point. And in line with that, there is a fish advisory for mercury for the Savannah River. So there is already an advisory for mercury. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody, and thank you, Susan.
Okay. Thank you all.
All right. Board members, we have a choice. We can, oh, I'm sorry. Edwin, did you have a comment?
Yes, I wanted to introduce Mr. Brian Cox. He's with NNSA. He's their communications lead. Just want to make sure you guys were able to see him and recognize him. But he's joined us today, and just want to make sure you guys are aware of that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we have a choice to make. We can kind of keep going and plow through and move on to board business. Or we can take a break. It's a little early. We definitely have time. So my question is, what would you all like to do?
I move that we just power through.
Power through? Anyone opposed to that, board members? No? Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you to all of our presenters today, and we are going to move right along to board business. So in your folders, and for those of you in the audience, next to the actual agenda is the draft recommendation, preventing water damage and turf growth on in situ deactivated, decommissioned facilities using epoxy. To get a little bit of background about this, Pat, would you like to speak on this?
Pat Kilroy, CAB. Last year, we were notified that there was, growth on top of the reactor buildings, and they're basically flat, and soil accumulates, seeds accumulate, and stuff grows. And it's my understanding that the top of these buildings are all concrete. And if that's true, that's good, but somebody at the last meeting said something about they had bituminous coverings in some places, and I'm not really, don't know about this, but if they're bituminous coverings, the epoxy coating is not going to do much good, because the bituminous is going to continue to deteriorate under there, and that material has I even looked it up, it has a 15 to 30 year lifespan. But I brought some stuff. I wanted to show y'all, pass this around. This is a piece of a cinder block that about 35 years ago, I put some epoxy on. It'll make you strong, pass that around. But you can see that the epoxy is still on, and that's been outside. This wasn't any special epoxy or anything. I think it was used for gluing down flooring. And something that's last 35 years, and you could get it, I'm not in the epoxy business, I'm not a chemical engineer, but you could get it with, ultraviolet protectors, and also you could get it with fiberglass, all kinds of fillers. They make it with everything. But this is just something to show you, but that's lasted 35 years. My concern is just having concrete up there. You're going to have little divots. You're going to collect stuff. It's going to grow stuff. Oh, look at that woman carrying. And, but over time, it's going to crack. And I'm not saying this year, next year, 20 years. I'm concerned about the future. And somebody said, what we need to do with all the reactors is just cover them, just make them big mountains. And that'd probably be those as we decommission and look at it. But I think this is an opportunity, because if you do this and you put fillers in the correct places, you fill in all the divots and everything, the water for the most part will run off. And if it runs off, whether it flows stuff on there or not, we won't have growth up there, because growth, what happens, you get a place, gets water in it, it grows. In the winter, the water freezes, water expands, and it cracks some more. And I think this might be a better long-term solution. And also, which was, I don't know, for the most part, it's probably gone now. I thought about lining of the tanks with epoxy, but that seems to have pretty well taken its course, and it's a good idea. But I just wanted to, I brought some samples. I brought all kinds of samples y'all can look at. Y'all pass this stuff around. But I've been fooling with epoxy since I was 16 years old. And that's a piece of steel with just epoxy on it. But the thing about a piece of steel is that it will stop. Epoxy is a very good thing to stop moisture and oxygen. It really does. It's extremely well. If you do body work on cars, it's the best thing to you instead of Bondo. But I do think treating the tops of these buildings with some type of epoxy-based material. I'm not saying which kind, but you know, how UV protector in it, and also maybe some other additives. I think would be a good idea.
Thank you, Pat. I encourage board members, for those of you who were in attendance to the subcommittee meeting, think about the information that was presented when we met virtually, but also any of the information that you've been given from any of our experts here on site. I did see your question card go up, Phyllis. Did you, as your discussion opens? And so at this time, board members, you are more than welcome to discuss the draft recommendation here. If you'd like to make changes to the draft or what have you. So Phyllis?
I was just going to say a couple of things from the committee meeting. It was my understanding, and you guys out there can correct me if I'm misunderstood this, but it was my understanding that the roofs are not flat, that had been handled when they were going through D&D, that they weren't flat and that there was runoff. And as you said, if it's coated, I don't remember about that either, with some sort of bituminous coating, you even said it won't work. So I think the experts have already looked at all of this. I don't see any point in the recommendation. I'll be voting not to move forward.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments that they would like to make? Kim?
Kim Ray, CAB. I just have a question. Pat, did you meet with the Facilities and Disposition Site Remediation Committee in forming this recommendation?
So I'm going to answer that. And to be fair to Pat, with only 10 members, we really haven't broken out into committees. We did a subcommittee version last month where anybody who chose to attend was able to provide input on these and all that. Breaking out into subcommittees with 10 folks gets a little weird, but we do maintain the working group environment so that you have a chance to work through these before we bring them to the full board.
So that's why I'm asking, was there
Yes,
any
ma'am.
input from anyone on that committee?
So during the discussion or afterwards, Pat, that you can.
No, because you could see how many members we have here today.
Right. Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Any more comments, questions? Okay, well, in front of you, there's a little slip of paper. It's a paper ballot. Yes, we need to have a motion to vote. A draft recommendation preventing water damage and turf growth. Well, you see it up there. Yes.
One thing before we go on. Last year, a year ago, I asked for some videos of pictures of the roofs. And I've never seen anything. And I was told at one point that they were not given the okay to give me pictures of that. And so what I see from the pictures of the ground, and also you get on Google, look at the top, but you can't tell squat. So, you know, I'm just going on and they got the little battlements up there, and it appears to be a somewhat flat roof, but I don't know. And that's all I can see. I'm just going on the assumption. And then it does tell me one thing, though. If you've got stuff growing up there, there are places where water and soil accumulate. That's obvious. And whatever the course is up there, there shouldn't be any water or soil that accumulates.
Lots of us have ivy growing on the sides of our houses. There's no water accumulating there.
Where are the roots of ivy?
In the brick.
In the ground, because I have ivy all over something.
But it has little things that cling to the brick.
Pat, your mic is not live. No one can hear you online.
Root, hell anyway.
Any other comments? At this time, we need a motion to,
I move that we vote.
all right. Second? Second. Thank you, Janie. In front of you is the ballot. Yay means you proceed with the draft recommendation. Nay, the discussion stops here. And I guess, will I need to collect them? Okay. Okay. I'm just trying to avoid the monitors because I know there's going to be a lot of feedback or if anybody has another open mic. Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Can I get, oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. There you go.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Keep me honest.
All right. Thank you. The draft recommendation has not been approved. All right. Thank you all so much for your participation in that. Yeah. And now we move to public comments. I didn't see any names on the list. Anyone back there would want to make a comment? I mean, I'm not really like pushing you to go to the microphone, but I just want to make sure. If we're good, then we're good. Okay. Any additional questions or comments from the board? No? Phyllis?
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your participation. We'll have a committee meeting,
In June, I'll send an email reminder.
Okay.
You'll receive an email reminder.
and it will be here.
So, no, actually,
we're out.
the
That's
subcommittee meetings are actually virtual now.
That's right.
So
I knew that.
That's okay. Well, it's actually a very valid point that you brought up. Just in case no one is aware, the subcommittee meetings are virtual only, and the only meetings that we'll have in person will be the full board meetings. So the next full board meeting is July 22nd at the Center for African American History, Art, and Culture. That's in downtown Aiken. And our next subcommittee meeting, as I stated, will be in June. You'll receive an email reminder from us, but it will be virtual. So if you're not already on our distribution list, if you've signed your name on the sign-in sheet there, and you'd like for your email, don't worry, I'll get you, Crystal. I see you looking. It's okay. We're going to add you to the distribution list, okay? And thank you for being here today. Same to Brian. Thank you for being here today as well. And also, we have Mike. Mike, thanks for being here today. All right.
Oh, and I did have one question I think Marty asked earlier about the website.
Yeah.
What does it take to get our meetings updated as far as when and where?
The blood of a virgin. I'm kidding. No, so I'm sorry. So no, we actually have to get approval to be able to post information to our website now from HQ. And so once we get that approval, we are able to then submit a request to have the documents added to the website.
And y'all are working on that. I assume,
Always. That's
as
always.
much as you can.
Yes, and if you have your travel vouchers in front of you, make sure you've signed it, and Chris will come pick it up for you. So just leave it on the table. Leave it, if you're taking your folder, just leave it on the table. If you're not taking it, put it on top so that he knows to collect it. If you did not sign in when you came in, whether you are in the audience or on the board, please make sure you sign in so that we know you were here. I also want to give a special shout out to the CAB support staff. Thank you all so much for your hard work, for the meetings. And if you're looking at this scrolling presentation, Audrey just updated it. I think it looks fantastic. She's added some animations, so we have a fresh look. And of course, Chris is our presentation guru back there. So thank you guys so much. And thank you to our leadership. All right, I'm done.
One last question. Where do we stand as far as awaiting new members?
Well, the membership package has moved to the next level of approval. That's all we know, literally. That's literally the answer I can give you.
No timeline.
No timeline was given. It just says, hey, guess what? Your membership packages have moved to this level. And we were like, great, that's great. That's it. But as soon as we hear something, we will send an update.
I know.
We did contact the potential members, however, to let them know where we were in the process. So,
Okay, good.
yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else? Without objection, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.